Hello, we're going to look at Pamela Anderson's chart today because a great article showed up on our CBC here. I'll bring it up, which is the Canadian Broadcast Corporation interview with her from Tom Power. And the title is After Reinventing Her Career with The Last Showgirl, Pamela Anderson finally recognizes herself. She says, I think my career has just started, the Canadian-born actress says in a Q interview. So with that in mind, I of course get excited and we bring up her chart in Huber. I'm going to march over there. So this is her actual natal chart, Cancerian Sun, born July 1st, 1967. And you'll quickly notice, without getting into a whole lot of in-depth, is that most of her chart is below the horizon here. And in Huber, we want to take note of the general landscape of the chart because this is the wiring of the psyche, and much research was done into the house systems, which is the biopsychosocial area that we actually live out our charts. In a chart, things we can say with a good amount of assurances, when you have a chart of this nature that most of the planets are below the horizon, it's that most of the planets are literally kind of in the unconscious, if you will, and we have very kind of conditioned responses, especially with any planets on this side of the chart, but they're also just motivations that are going to be coming from a less kind of conscious place, right? Because the light is above the chart, and I'm not dealing with sect or anything like that. I'm using our own Huber language, and we can see that most of these experiences are going to be coming from places that are going to be a bit more foreign to Pamela. As her age point would move around the chart and would poke its head above the horizon here at the DC, she would become a lot more kind of aware and self-individualized, if you will. But more on that. Let's just quickly jump over to the age point. So for her age point right now, we can see a few things going on. A kite is being formed with Mercury here and Venus, sorry, Mercury and Neptune, and the oppositions to Pluto and Uranus right here. So when we look at this, and if we didn't know any context for Pamela, we might say something like, well, she's forming an opposition to Pluto. Perhaps she's going to marry a nuclear reactor, or she's going to die, or, whatever. What do we like to say with Pluto? Transformation, right? So we would probably try to defend ourselves and have a rough kind of consultation with our client because you'd be just squirreling away with Hades and the three-headed dog that Pamela would be forced to live with over the course of the year, making this opposition to Pluto. So I'm a little bit joking, but honestly, that would be the general language and landscape that most astrologers would kind of approach this with. So we got to be careful. It's also at a low point here in Pisces. So whenever an age point is at a low point, there is an inner understanding. It's usually a crisis point, maybe crisis in that my understanding of that Japanese idea of the crisis, right? Transformation and a switch. So what we're doing here at the low point is we finally come in, take the ship into port, and a lot of things can be thrown at us. It's neither good nor bad. You can't place those simplistic judgments on it. But at a direct low point, you can be sure that there's going to be some insights of what the real call of self, that kind of soul's motivations. The ego loses control really at the low point, and you have to be kind of subordinated, subjugated perhaps to the soul of the inner chart. So with that in mind, with this age point, we got this beautiful kite going on and this opposition to Pluto. So did she marry a nuclear reactor? No. With her, it was about reinventing herself. And Pluto, of course, is a lot of things, but most importantly is that it is our pneuma, our prototype, shows us the way forward, and there's usually quite a bit of movement towards our true identity, right? And kind of movement away from all the false levels of the ego, if you will. We have to get down to business. And that's what Pluto reflects, which is why it gets associated with transformation and what have you. So she says here, like I mentioned before, I think my career has just started. And I've always known I was capable of more. Pamela Anderson repeats several times throughout her conversation with Q's on power. Sometimes when you think it's the end, it's really the beginning. And even just at that, you feel free to kind of walk through this whole article. You could give it a listen. The language of obviously Pluto, transformation of connecting with one's higher self, um, is very evident. And if we stumble back to her chart here, this is all taking place in her axis of individuation, right? The fourth house is her family roots. I would be looking back to see what took place with her around the early 20s. But now, not it's not based on the fourth house of family and roots. She's now standing on top of the pile at the low point with that dastardly Pluto down here. And most importantly is that all that context is true, but it's a huge kite being formed. Now the kite is both a Huber aspect pattern, and it's common in modern astrology as well too. To keep it simple, it's this big glorious set of trines and sextiles, and the inner rigid system is this Pluto opposition here, which gives it some kind of strength and girth. You can bet your bottom dollar that when you see a kite being formed in a chart, there is going to be a sense of those sails being fulfilled and a larger kind of capable movement. And notice how I'm not able to predict with that. What I'm basically able to kind of showcase is that the client, if they engage with that, no matter what's going on in their lives, they can take hold of this kite and use it in accordance with their chart and the age point, what's going on, to really give meaning. And as a Huber astrologer, Pamela is detailing how that kind of level of energy, transformation, if you will, is going on for her. And I'm just keeping this very, very broad and simple. I'm not going to get into the weeds here of looking at individual planets or anything else, but simply focusing on where she is of this low point, this individuation axis where she's finally in the 10th house, kind of playing into herself, and the patterns that she is speaking to from this article are showing up really, really clear, and she's getting down to business of who she truly is. Um, and that really does showcase why it's important to not simply see Pluto as the big baddie, and to allow the client's experience and the birth chart to kind of come into fruition to be true right at that level. So all to say, we can see that the article, she speaks to that. She's not aware of her chart. I'm bringing her chart up here. And it does, I think, mirror well if you want to play around with this, reading through her articles, perhaps other interviews she's done, and you can pick away and see that this is a really pivotal moment for her, and she is lighting up this kite. And working with a client at this level, I'll switch over to the camera here, isn't about predicting that. We can show the heights of when that energy is full, so they might come to you and having an existential crisis, right? This opposition to Pluto or individuating in the 10th house. Obviously, Pamela's leaned into it well, but if there is hesitation there, if they want clarity and understanding, we can bring their chart in. We can do the chart analysis, speak about the age point, speak about the kite, relate it to past events 36 years ago, perhaps when it was at the direct conjunction. But most importantly is about um, following the guidelines that we study in Huber to understand the planetary energies. What is Pluto asking of us? How can we rise into it in a beneficial manner, in a positive manner, if you will, and knowing that there's going to be a whole bunch of things going on. Other astrological timing systems would show a lot of things as well. And if you brought up ferdarias or transits and progressions and returns, it might highlight that, she's going to buy a car next week, whatever. But I think at the large level, what Huber does really, really well is our focus on understanding ourselves at a deep level beyond the ego, beyond the unconscious motivations that Pamela would have a lot of based on her chart, and how she is stepping into that at a very, more progressive, if you will, conscious level. And that's what we can hold space for, is listening for that and padding it out and giving some parameters on time. But it would be wrong to come in there and say, obviously, and I'm joking, but I've heard a lot of astrologers want to talk like this, the oppositions to Pluto do not mean you're going to marry a nuclear reactor, unfortunately. Anyway, good luck with if you decide to go through Pamela's chart. I'm going to bring up the website here again, and it's CBC. You could go to Q with Tom Power, and there's a YouTube video as well, and it's under the art section. I guess I could send out the link, but you could just Google this. Should come right up for you. Okay, take care.